I have a question. So I'm a grad student here, PhD in biochemistry, and I'd like to know from you guys in the future about, your science vision. How is science going to be conducted here in the United States? Recently, with stem cell research being sort of put on the back burner here in the U.S., a lot of people are going to Singapore, and this is sort of like a huge industry for us. We don't have so many factories around anymore. We really need the science. We really need the innovation, and that's something I'd like to hear a little more. You guys.
Well, he's the candidate. I'll let him go first, then I'll say something. Look, I'll start. I mean, the greatest competitive advantage this country has is its education system. And we got to continue to invest in our education system. And that's how we're going to keep, good paying jobs here. I look around at the state of Connecticut. I look at pharmaceuticals. I look at, stem cell research. I look at energy technology and fuel cell technology. These are places that Connecticut can excel. These are places that the United States should excel. We have a Bush administration, I think, that's cutting back on research, cutting back on, a lot of the core research we got to do going forward. I think that's wrong. Obviously, they're playing games with stem cell research. That's the very places we ought to have fundamental federal funding. That's how we're going to keep our competitive edge going. Look at what China's doing. Look what India's doing when it comes to basic science research and science education. And I think we're losing our edge. I think we're making bad choices. And that's, I think I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, well, and that actually pretty much said it. I mean, I think the key for America over the long term is to have some disciplined vision about where America needs to go. Unfortunately, that discipline and vision has been missing, and it's been combined with an ideological fervor that's very dangerous for America. If we want to remain competitive, we have to be at the cutting edge every day of science and math, technology. And unfortunately, there has been, I don't want to cry wolf, but there's been some slow erosion of that advantage over time. And it requires some investment. It requires us being smart and aggressive. But the Bush administration has cut funding for the NIH. They've cut funding for our research universities in all these areas that we just talked about. We should be doing exactly the opposite. It's profoundly stupid. What we should be doing is investing in all those areas so that America can maintain its competitive edge. It's the only way that we can remain the great economic power in the world.
Have you guys seen An Inconvenient Truth?
I have not. He has.
Yes.
I've heard it's great, but I have not
It's a
seen
great
it.
film.
I have a question. Coming up on the anniversary of Hurricane Katrina down in New Orleans, and while you were away for a minute there, Senator Edwards, we were talking about poverty and how it's an issue that people don't talk about. So I'd like either or both of you to talk about what you see as the future for New Orleans, and maybe, just your thoughts on the importance of addressing the poverty issue in this country.
I'll start on that one since it's my thing. Well, first of all, let me just lay a foundation. I've spent a fair amount of time in New Orleans, took a bunch of college kids down there to work during the spring break. If you go to New Orleans today, in most of New Orleans, you can tell no difference between the condition now compared to what it was right after the hurricane hit. This is a complete failure of presidential leadership. They can blame FEMA, they can blame bureaucracies, they can blame local government. The truth of the matter is that the President of the United States went to New Orleans instead of flying over in Air Force One or giving a speech, actually spent time to see what was happening and demanded action. There would be action taken. The President of the United States should be saying, I want to see these people in my office every morning, and I want you, and hold them accountable, and I want you to tell me what you did yesterday in New Orleans, not what you did 6 months ago, what you did yesterday. If that were to happen, things would change. I was there for for these kids working. I never saw a government employee working, never saw a government employee coming around to ask what was happening. We were in St. Bernard's Parish where all the residents there that we spoke to had not seen anybody. The only help they'd gotten were from volunteers. This is an abysmal failure. And I might add, joins with an entire history of failure with this administration. I mean, it's the response to the hurricane, it's the war in Iraq, it's things like trying to implement the prescription drug benefit. Now, the truth, I think the honest truth is they're pretty good at running campaigns, they're very bad at government. And unfortunately, our country has seen the consequences of that. What I think we should do in New Orleans is we ought to use it as an example of what's possible in America. The extraordinary economic and racial segregation that we saw in places like the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans, is not good for our country. It's not good for our democracy. And we could use New Orleans as a way to show the country that we don't have to live that way, that we don't have to have poor people clustered together, that we don't have to have black people, people of color clustered together, that we can integrate both economically and racially in a way that's healthy. And instead of rebuilding the city using, Halliburton and these big companies who are getting billions of dollars, we could actually give jobs to the people who lost their homes and lost their jobs in New Orleans and let them rebuild their own city. So they could take a little pride in what they were doing. They'd be able to support their families. Be able to, we should pay them. They make sure that they're paid a decent wage and get health care coverage. But at least in my head, New Orleans could have been, and I wouldn't give up on it yet, but could have been an example of what's possible in America, and unfortunately we didn't take advantage of it. Hadn't just, thinking hard about it, hadn't decided yet. Let me let you know.
I just add a couple of things to what John just said. We're going to rebuild New Orleans. It's in the strategic interest of the United States to have this port vibrant and operating, and it should be no excuse for our foot dragging that's going on. Two, I look at Senator Lieberman, who rolled FEMA right into Homeland Security. I think that was a terrible mistake. I think FEMA is a much more effective organization. When it was pure, it was an independent organization, and that would have been better in terms of immediate response. And most importantly, I'm here saluting Senator Edwards, because he's somebody that takes on an issue that a lot of people don't pay attention to. That's the question of poverty in this country. And one of the effects of FEMA, one of the effects of Katrina was taking a look down at New Orleans, and we really saw poverty. A lot of people around the country didn't realize the poverty that afflicts so many of our urban centers right now. And I think that makes it all the more important. It's an urgency for all of America that we rebuild New Orleans in a serious way. It's in the strategic interest of our country. It's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Thank you. You guys can get to